At my son's graduation, my nephew snatched his gift card and screamed, "I deserve this." The family chuckled, then Aunt said, "Let it go, it's just money." I hugged my boy. Fine. That night I emailed the company, position cancelled. Relax, it's just a job I arranged. The auditorium buzzed with the excited chatter of proud parents and fidgeting graduates. I sat in the third row, clutching my purse where a special envelope waited for my son Tyler. After 4 years of watching him struggle through engineering courses, surviving on ramen and determination, this moment felt like vindication. My baby was about to receive his college diploma. Tyler walked across the stage with his head held high, his navy blue gown billowing slightly as he moved. His dark hair needed a trim, something he'd been putting off for weeks, and his shoes were the same scuffed dress shoes from his high school graduation. My throat tightened watching him shake the dean's hand. This kid had worked 2 part-time jobs while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. He'd called me crying twice during sophomore year, convinced he wasn't smart enough, wasn't good enough. I'd driven 3 hours each time to remind him who he was. After the ceremony, families flooded the lawn outside. I spotted Tyler near the fountain, surrounded by his roommates. His face lit up when he saw me approaching. Before I could reach him, my sister Natalie appeared at my elbow with her husband Greg and their son Brandon trailing behind. "There's the college graduate," Natalie sang out, pulling Tyler into a hug that seemed genuine enough. "We're so proud of you, sweetie." Brandon stood there scrolling through his phone. At 19, he dropped out of community college after 1 semester, claiming the courses were beneath him. Natalie had spent the past year making excuses while Brandon bounced between part-time retail jobs, usually quitting within weeks when managers asked him to actually work. "Thanks, Aunt Natalie," Tyler said, his smile reaching his eyes. He'd always been kind to everyone, sometimes to his own detriment. I pulled out the envelope I'd been guarding all morning. Inside was a gift card worth $2,000 to a major electronics store. Tyler had been accepted into a graduate program starting in the fall, and he needed a new laptop desperately. His current one had a cracked screen held together with tape and a battery that lasted maybe 40 minutes. "This is for you, honey," I said, pressing the envelope into his hands. "For all your hard work." Tyler's eyes went wide when he opened it. "Mom, this is too much." Brandon's hand shot out faster than I could process. He snatched the gift card from Tyler's fingers and held it above his head like a trophy. "I deserve this." His voice came out as a shriek that made several nearby families turn to stare. Everything seemed to slow down. Tyler's face fell, his expression shifting from joy to confusion to hurt in the span of a heartbeat. My hand was still extended, frozen in midair where I'd been handing my son his gift. "Brandon." I moved toward him, but Greg stepped between us. "Come on now," Greg said, chuckling as if his son had just told a mildly amusing joke. "Boys will be boys." Natalie laughed too, that high-pitched twitter she used when she was uncomfortable but trying to appear casual. "Brandon, give it back," she said without any real conviction in her voice. Brandon had already pocketed the card. Why should Tyler get everything? He's not special just because he graduated. Plenty of people graduate college. He worked incredibly hard for this, I said, trying to keep my voice level. Other families were definitely watching now. Tyler stood there looking at the ground, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "Let it go," Natalie said, touching my arm. "It's just money. Tyler's going to have a fancy engineering job soon anyway. Brandon needs it more." The audacity of that statement nearly knocked me backward. Brandon needs it more. Brandon, who'd quit every job he'd ever had because showing up on time was apparently too difficult. Brandon, who still lived in their basement rent-free while spending his days gaming and complaining about how unfair life was. I looked at Tyler. My son, who never asked for anything, who'd eaten cereal for dinner countless times to save money, who'd walked to campus in the snow because he'd sold his car to pay for textbooks. His jaw was tight, and I recognized that expression. He was swallowing down his feelings, trying not to make a scene, attempting to be the bigger person yet again. Something crystallized in that moment. How many times had I taught Tyler to be gracious? How often had I told him to take the high road? And where had it gotten him? Standing on what should be one of the happiest days of his life, watching his cousin steal from him while his aunt and uncle laughed it off. I hugged Tyler tightly. Fine, I said loud enough for Natalie to hear. Her shoulders relaxed. Greg actually smiled. Brandon was already on his phone, probably planning what he'd buy. We should get lunch, Natalie suggested brightly, as if nothing had happened. Our treat. To celebrate Tyler's achievement. We have other plans, I said, my voice pleasant and flat. But thank you. Tyler and I walked to my car in silence. He climbed into the passenger seat and stared straight ahead. His hands were trembling slightly. I'm sorry, honey, I said. It's whatever, he muttered. Like Aunt Natalie said, it's just money. But it wasn't just money. We both knew that. It was respect. It was acknowledgement. It was the principle that you don't steal from someone on their graduation day and expect everyone to laugh along. I took him to his favorite restaurant, a small Italian place near campus where the owner knew him by name because he'd worked delivery for them during sophomore year. Over pasta, Tyler gradually relaxed. We talked about his graduate program, his plans for the summer, anything except what had happened. That night, back in my apartment, I opened my laptop. The blue light illuminated my small home office as I pulled up my work email. As the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Hartwell Industries, a mid-size manufacturing company, I spent most of my time building relationships with other businesses. We manufactured components for various industries, nothing glamorous, but solid work with good people. 3 months earlier, Natalie had approached me at our mother's birthday dinner. She pulled me aside into the kitchen while everyone else was eating cake. I need to ask you a favor, she'd said, her voice low and urgent. Brandon needs a break. He's been having such a hard time finding the right fit, you know? He's got so much potential, but these entry-level jobs just don't appreciate him. I'd made a noncommittal sound while washing dishes. I heard your company is expanding, she continued. Greg and I were thinking, maybe you could help Brandon get his foot in the door? Nothing too demanding, just something to build his resume. He's really good with people when he wants to be. The request had made me uncomfortable. Our company did have openings in our sales support division. Entry-level positions that came with decent benefits and real opportunities for advancement if someone applied themselves. But recommending Brandon felt wrong on multiple levels. I don't know, Natalie. I don't work directly with HR. But you know people, she'd pressed. You have connections. Please. He's family. The family card. She played it with such confidence, knowing I'd have trouble refusing. And she'd been right. Despite my reservations, despite knowing Brandon's work history, I'd made some calls. I'd spoken with Jennifer, our HR director, over coffee. Mentioned that my nephew was looking for opportunities. Talked up his potential while carefully avoiding any specifics about his actual experience. Jennifer had been receptive. We're always looking for young people we can train. If he's got your recommendation, that means something. Have him send over his resume. I'd facilitated the whole thing. Proofread Brandon's resume, which had required significant creative editing to make his scattered work history look intentional rather than chaotic. Connected him with Jennifer directly. Even coached him through the interview process, spending 2 hours on the phone explaining what they'd ask and how he should respond. The preparation for that interview had been exhausting. Brandon kept getting distracted during our practice sessions, checking his phone every few minutes. When I'd ask him to tell me about his greatest weakness, he'd said, "I'm too honest," without a trace of irony. I'd spent 30 minutes explaining why that answer made him sound arrogant rather than self-aware. What about saying you sometimes take on too much because you care about doing quality work? I'd suggested. He'd shrugged. Sure, whatever you think sounds good. I should have recognized then that he wasn't taking this seriously. But I'd pushed forward, telling myself that once he got into a professional environment, he'd rise to the occasion. People grow up when they have real responsibilities, I'd reasoned. Brandon just needed the right opportunity. During one of our coaching calls, he complained about his current job at a sporting goods store. My manager is such a control freak. She literally times our breaks to make sure we're not taking extra minutes. Like, who does that? That's pretty standard in retail, I'd said carefully. Managers have to account for labor costs. Well, it's ridiculous. I told her I needed fresh air, and she said I could get fresh air during my scheduled 15-minute break. So I just stopped showing up for closing shifts. If she's going to be that rigid, why should I accommodate her schedule? A warning bell had gone off in my head, but I'd ignored it. Family was family, and Natalie had been so desperate for me to help. I'd convinced myself that Brandon's attitude was just youthful rebellion, something he'd outgrow with the right guidance. The position was scheduled to start in 2 weeks. Sales support associate, $45,000 a year plus benefits, with a clear path to sales representative within a year if he performed well. For someone with Brandon's limited experience, it was genuinely a gift. Natalie had been thrilled when Brandon got the offer. She'd called me 3 times that day, gushing about what a difference I'd made, how this was exactly what Brandon needed, how grateful they all were. Her exact words during the second call had been, "You've literally saved his future." Greg and I were so worried about him. He's been so down lately, feeling like nothing works out for him. This is going to change everything. I just know he's going to shine there. I felt good about it then. Proud, even. Like I'd done something meaningful for my family. Natalie had always been the golden child growing up, the pretty one who made friends easily while I'd been bookish and awkward. Helping her son had felt like finally contributing something valuable to her life, bridging a gap that had existed since childhood. Mom had called me too, after Natalie had obviously filled her in. "That was very generous of you, sweetheart. I know it probably wasn't easy to put yourself out there professionally like that." Natalie is over the moon. "It's what family does," I'd said, meaning it sincerely. Brandon is lucky to have an aunt who believes in him. Not everyone would go out on a limb like that. Those words had made me uncomfortable even then. Going out on a limb. Because that's exactly what I'd done, hadn't it? I'd leveraged my professional reputation, my relationships with colleagues, my credibility that I'd spent years building. I'd wrapped it all up and handed it to someone whose work history should have made me run in the opposite direction. But Natalie was my sister. Brandon was my nephew. And Tyler had always been the successful one, the kid who didn't need extra help or special intervention. Surely I could afford to extend this one kindness to the family member who was struggling. The night Brandon got the offer, I'd taken myself out to dinner to celebrate. I'd sat alone at a quiet restaurant, treating myself to an expensive meal and a glass of wine, feeling like I'd accomplished something important. I'd texted Tyler about it, and he'd responded with a simple "That's nice, Mom. Hope it works out." Looking back, I could see the reservation in his message. Tyler had grown up watching Brandon at family gatherings. He'd seen the tantrums, the excuses, the way his aunt and uncle smoothed over every problem. My son was too polite to say anything directly, but he'd known. He'd known this was probably a mistake. Now I stared at Jennifer's email address in my contacts. My finger hovered over the keys. This wasn't about the money. The $2,000 stung, yes, but I could replace it. I'd already decided I'd order Tyler a new laptop myself and have it shipped to his apartment. He'd protest, but I'd insist. This was about something deeper. It was about Brandon learning that actions have consequences. About Natalie and Greg understanding that enabling their son's worst impulses wouldn't work forever. About Tyler seeing that his mother would stand up for him when others wouldn't. I started typing. "Hi Jennifer, I need to discuss something sensitive regarding Brandon's upcoming position. Could we schedule a call tomorrow morning? It's important." I sent it before I could second-guess myself. Jennifer called me at 8 the next morning, her voice warm and curious. "What's going on? Is Brandon okay?" "That's what I need to talk about," I said, settling into my desk chair with my coffee. "I need to withdraw my recommendation." Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, "Can you tell me why?" I'd spent half the night preparing what to say. I recommended Brandon based on family loyalty, not professional assessment. Yesterday something happened that made me realize I was putting our company in a potentially difficult position. His work history shows a pattern I should have been more upfront about. He's had 7 jobs in 2 years, none lasting more than 3 months. "I saw that on his resume," Jennifer said. "But you vouched for him." "I know. That was wrong of me. I let family pressure override my professional judgment." The words tasted bitter but true. Brandon has behavioral issues that make him unsuitable for a professional environment. Yesterday he physically took something from my son and his parents laughed it off. When I saw how his family enables that kind of conduct, I realized I couldn't in good conscience place him in our workplace. Jennifer sighed. I appreciate you telling me this before his start date. It's not ideal, but it's better than finding out after we've invested training time. I'm sorry for wasting your time. You didn't waste it. You caught a mistake before it became a bigger problem. That's actually pretty professional. She paused. The offer letter did include language about at will employment and probationary periods, so legally we're fine to rescind. I'll draft something for legal to review, then we'll send Brandon a notification that we're withdrawing the offer. Thank you for understanding. We've all been there with family stuff, Jennifer said kindly. It's tough when personal and professional overlap. For what it's worth, I think you made the right call. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my office. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Natalie. She'd left one voicemail. Hey, it's me. Brandon is so excited about his new job. He's been telling all his friends. Greg already bought him some new work clothes. Could you maybe take him to lunch this week and give him some pointers? You know, insider tips about the company culture? Call me back. The cheerfulness in her voice made my stomach twist. But I didn't return the call. 2 days passed. I spent them working, going through my normal routines, checking on Tyler, who was busy packing up his college apartment. He seemed better, though I caught him looking sad when he thought I wasn't watching. On the 3rd day, my phone exploded with messages. The first was from Natalie, call me now. Then Greg, what did you do? Then my mother, Natalie is very upset. She says you sabotaged Brandon's job. Please call her. I waited until evening, after I'd finished work and made myself dinner. Then I called Natalie. She answered on the first ring. How could you? No greeting, just immediate accusation. Brandon got an email today saying his offer was withdrawn. He's devastated. I withdrew my recommendation, I said calmly. I realized I'd made a professional error. A professional error? This was his chance. He finally had something good lined up, and you destroyed it. I didn't destroy anything. Brandon has been destroying his own opportunities for years. I just stopped enabling it. This is about the gift card. Her voice dropped, becoming cold. You're punishing a 19-year-old kid because of a stupid mistake. A stupid mistake, I repeated. Natalie, your son stole from Tyler on his graduation day. And you laughed. It wasn't stealing, it was just boys being boys. They're cousins. Tyler didn't even care. Tyler cared very much. But he spent his whole life being taught to be gracious and let things go. Meanwhile, Brandon has spent his whole life learning that he can take what he wants and face no consequences because you'll make excuses for him. You're being cruel and vindictive. I'm being honest. Your son has had 7 jobs in 2 years. He quits when he's asked to show up on time or actually work. My company doesn't need that kind of employee, and I was wrong to try and force it because we're family. Greg's voice came through in the background, muffled but angry. Natalie put me on speaker. You set him up, Greg said. You got him all excited about this job just to pull it away. That's sick. I arranged the job before graduation, I said. Before Brandon showed me exactly who he is. If he'd just been a decent person for one day, he'd still have the position. Over a gift card. Natalie shrieked. You're destroying your nephew's future over a gift card. No, I'm letting Brandon experience the natural consequences of his choices. Something you should have been doing since he was a child. My mother called 10 minutes later, her voice strained with the effort of playing peacemaker. Sweetheart, Natalie is beside herself. Is there any way you can fix this? No, Mom. She's your sister. And Tyler is my son. Why is everyone so concerned about Brandon's feelings when nobody cared about Tyler's? Tyler is fine. He's a college graduate with a bright future. Tyler was humiliated at his own graduation. Brandon physically took something out of his hands while Natalie and Greg stood there laughing. And now I'm the bad guy for deciding not to use my professional reputation to help someone who behaves that way? Mom was quiet for a long moment. When you put it like that, there's no other way to put it. I love you, Mom, but I'm not discussing this anymore. The family group chat became a war zone. Natalie posted long messages about my betrayal, about family loyalty, about how I'd always been jealous of Brandon's natural charisma. Greg chimed in with accusations of nepotism in reverse. Several relatives I barely knew offered their opinions. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications. I muted the group chat and blocked their numbers after the 15th call. Tyler called me that evening, his voice concerned. "Mom, Aunt Natalie is posting stuff about you on social media. She's saying you sabotaged Brandon's job." "I know, honey." "Is it true? Did you get him a job and then cancel it?" I explained everything. The original recommendation, the interview process, my conversation with Jennifer, the reasoning behind my decision. Tyler listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet. Then, "Good." "What?" "Good," he repeated, his voice stronger. "I'm glad you did it. Not because of the money, though that sucked. But because somebody needed to show Brandon that acting like that doesn't work. And Aunt Natalie and Uncle Greg definitely weren't going to teach him." "You're not upset with me?" "Mom, I've watched Brandon be a jerk to people his whole life. Every family gathering, he says something mean or takes something that isn't his, and everyone just laughs it off. I always wondered why adults let him get away with it." He paused. "I'm actually kind of proud of you. That made my eyes sting. Thank you, sweetheart. Though for the record, I really could have used that laptop money." "Already ordered? Should arrive at your place Thursday." He laughed, genuine and bright. "You're the best." A week later, Jennifer asked me to lunch. We met at a cafe near the office, and she slid into the booth with a knowing smile. "So I did some follow-up after our conversation," she said. "Called a couple of Brandon's previous employers. Just standard reference checks, nothing official." "And?" "One manager said he was constantly late, argued with customers, and told her she was a power-tripping witch when she wrote him up. Another said he disappeared halfway through a shift and never came back. A third said they'd removed him from the schedule after he was caught on his phone for 2 hours straight instead of stocking shelves." I winced. "Yeah. You saved us a major headache," Jennifer said. "I know it was awkward because of the family situation, but professionally? You did exactly the right thing. We would have wasted thousands on onboarding and training just to have him quit or get fired within a month. I should have been honest from the beginning." "Probably," she agreed. "But family makes everything complicated. The important thing is you corrected the mistake before it hurt the company." She took a sip of her coffee before continuing. "Can I tell you something in confidence?" "Of course." "I actually had reservations about Brandon from the beginning. His resume had more red flags than a Soviet parade. 7 jobs in 2 years? Each one lasting less than 3 months? But when you vouched for him, I thought maybe there were extenuating circumstances I didn't know about. Maybe he'd been dealing with family issues or health problems or something that explained the pattern." "There weren't any extenuating circumstances," I admitted. "Just a kid who's never been held accountable for anything." Jennifer nodded slowly. "I suspected as much. But you'd been with the company for 8 years. Your judgment on people has always been solid. So I overrode my instincts and trusted your recommendation." She smiled without humor. "Lesson learned on both our parts, I guess. I put you in an impossible position." "You did," she agreed bluntly. "But you also fixed it before it became unfixable. That counts for something. And honestly, the fact that you were willing to reverse your own recommendation, knowing it would cause family drama, tells me more about your character than the initial mistake did." We talked for another 20 minutes about work matters, upcoming projects, normal office business. But as we were getting ready to leave, Jennifer touched my arm. "For what it's worth, I think you did right by your son too. Kids need to see their parents stand up for them. My mom never did that for me, and I'm still working through that in therapy 30 years later." Her words stayed with me long after lunch ended. That conversation made me feel marginally better about the whole situation, though my inbox was still full of angry messages from various relatives who decided I was the villain in this story. Natalie sent a final email 2 weeks later, after apparently exhausting every other communication method. The subject line was "You'll regret this." The message was long, rambling, full of accusations and insults. But one paragraph stood out: "Brandon has been applying to jobs every day and getting rejected. When they call his references, 2 of his former managers are saying terrible things about him. You've poisoned the well. He'll never get a decent job now because of what you did. I read that paragraph 3 times, feeling my anger rise with each pass. Poisoned the well. As if I'd somehow orchestrated a conspiracy against Brandon rather than simply removed my false endorsement. As if his former managers wouldn't have given honest assessments of his work performance regardless of anything I did. The entitlement in that message was staggering. Natalie genuinely believed that Brandon deserved to have people lie for him, cover for him, misrepresent his abilities and work ethic to potential employers. She thought that was normal family support rather than the enabling behavior it actually was. I drafted a response and deleted it. Drafted another and deleted that too. Finally, I wrote something short and clear. Brandon's former managers are telling the truth about their experiences with him. If that truth is damaging to his job prospects, perhaps he should reflect on why. I'm done discussing this. I didn't send it. There was no point. Natalie would never understand. She'd spent 19 years constructing a reality where Brandon was a misunderstood victim of bad luck and unfair circumstances. Confronting her with facts wouldn't change that worldview. Instead, I forwarded her email to Tyler with a simple message, FYI, in case she reaches out to you. Tyler called me within minutes. Mom, you can't let her get to you. She's just mad because reality is finally catching up with Brandon. I know. But it's hard being painted as the villain. You're only the villain in her story. In my story, you're the hero who finally stood up to their nonsense. His voice was fierce with loyalty. Aunt Natalie has been making excuses for Brandon since we were kids. Remember when we were like 10 and 12, and he broke my handheld game console because I wouldn't let him play with it? She bought him a new one as a reward for expressing his feelings. I'd forgotten about that incident, but it came rushing back now. Tyler had saved his allowance for months to buy that game console. Brandon had grabbed it during a family barbecue, and when Tyler tried to take it back, Brandon had thrown it against the concrete patio, shattering the screen. Natalie's response had been to scold Tyler for not sharing and then take Brandon to the store to buy him his own console. I can't believe I forgot about that, I murmured. There are dozens of stories like that. He's been a brat his entire life, and everyone just lets him be a brat because it's easier than dealing with Aunt Natalie's meltdowns. Tyler paused. I'm actually glad this is happening. Not because I want Brandon to suffer, but because maybe, finally, he'll have to grow up. You're a better person than I am. Part of me absolutely wants him to suffer. Tyler laughed. That's fair too. I didn't respond. Brandon's former managers weren't saying terrible things because of me. They were telling the truth about their experiences with him. If that truth was damaging, perhaps Brandon should have behaved differently. 3 weeks after graduation, Tyler called me with excitement in his voice. Mom, you know that graduate program I got into? Of course. They're offering me a research assistant position. It pays $15,000 a year on top of my tuition waiver. I'll actually have spending money. We talked for an hour about his plans, his excitement, his goals. Not once did he mention Brandon or the gift card or that day. He'd moved on to bigger and better things. That's when I knew I'd made the right choice. 6 months passed. Thanksgiving approached with the inevitable question of family gatherings. My mother called, tentative and hopeful. Natalie wants to know if you'll come to Thanksgiving dinner at her house. Probably not, Mom. It's been half a year. Don't you think it's time to move past this? Has Natalie apologized? Silence. Has Brandon apologized to Tyler? More silence. Then no, I don't think it's time to move past it. They're welcome to apologize whenever they're ready. Until then, Tyler and I will make our own plans. Mom sighed heavily. You're being stubborn. This is tearing the family apart. No, Mom. Brandon stole from Tyler at his graduation, and Natalie defended him. That tore things apart. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. But you went further than that. You cost Brandon a job opportunity. Can't you see how Natalie would be upset about that? This was the heart of it, wasn't it? Everyone could see why Natalie was upset. Her son had lost a job. That was tangible, measurable, something they could point to and say, look at what she did. But nobody wanted to acknowledge what had led to that moment. The theft, the humiliation, the casual dismissal of Tyler's feelings. I can see why she's upset, I said carefully. But I can also see that she raised a son who thinks it's acceptable to steal from his cousin. I can see that she's more concerned about Brandon facing consequences than about him learning to be a decent person. And I can see that asking me to ignore all of that because it's been 6 months is asking me to prioritize her comfort over Tyler's dignity. Tyler's fine, Mom said, frustration creeping into her voice. He's got his fancy graduate program and his research position. He's not sitting around crying about this. That doesn't mean it didn't hurt him. Just because Tyler is successful doesn't mean he deserves to be treated poorly by his own family. Nobody treated him poorly. Brandon made a mistake. Teenagers make mistakes. Brandon is 19, not 13. And it wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. He saw something he wanted, and he took it, knowing exactly what he was doing. Then his parents laughed about it. The line went quiet for a long moment. When Mom spoke again, her voice had changed, become softer. I saw it happen, you know. I was standing about 10 feet away when Brandon grabbed the gift card. I saw Tyler's face. Then you know it wasn't just some harmless joke. I do, she admitted. And I was going to say something, but then Natalie and Greg were laughing, and I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was fine, and I was just being too sensitive. It wasn't fine. No, she agreed quietly. It wasn't. Tyler looked devastated. And you looked ready to commit murder. Despite everything, I found myself smiling slightly. That's pretty accurate. I should have said something then. I should have told Natalie to make Brandon give it back. But she's always been so defensive about him, and I didn't want to start a scene at Tyler's graduation. So instead, you let the scene happen to Tyler? Mom made a small sound, something between a sigh and a groan. You're right. I took the easy way out, and Tyler paid for it. I'm sorry. The apology surprised me. Mom was usually the type to mediate, smooth things over, avoid taking sides. Hearing her acknowledge her own failure meant something. Thank you for saying that. I'll still want you at Thanksgiving, though. Both you and Tyler. I'll handle Natalie. What does that mean? It means I'll tell her that you're both invited to my house for Thanksgiving, and she can decide whether she wants to come or not. But I'm not excluding my grandson because my other grandson is a thief. I actually laughed at that. Mom. What? He is. I love him, but facts are facts. She paused. I've been thinking about this a lot over the past few months. About how we've all enabled Brandon's behavior because it was easier than confronting Natalie. But that hasn't helped him, has it? He's 19 with no job, no prospects, and no skills because we've all let him believe the world owes him something. Natalie's not going to take this well. Probably not. But I'm 72 years old, and I'm tired of tiptoeing around her tantrums. She can be mad if she wants. I'm having Thanksgiving with both my grandsons. We spent Thanksgiving at my apartment. Just the two of us, cooking together, watching movies, talking about his research project. It was peaceful. No drama, no entitled cousins, no excuses for bad behavior. Tyler was happier than I'd seen him in years. Graduate school suited him. He'd made friends, impressed his professors, even started dating someone nice. He'd overcome the disappointment of that graduation day and built something better. In January, almost 8 months after graduation, my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered out of curiosity. Is this Tyler's mom? A young man's voice, uncertain. This is she. This is Brandon. A pause. I wanted to call and apologize. For what I did at Tyler's graduation. And for how I acted about the job thing. I sat down slowly. Go on. I've been working at a warehouse for the past few months. Night shift, loading trucks. It's hard work, and the supervisor doesn't take any garbage from anybody, he laughed bitterly. She made me realize that I've been acting like a spoiled brat my whole life. My parents always made excuses for me, but this lady doesn't care. She just cares if I do my job. That sounds like a valuable lesson. I'm really sorry. I was awful to Tyler, and you had every right to cancel that job. I would have gotten fired anyway, probably in the first week. His voice cracked slightly. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I get it now. Thank you for calling, Brandon. That took courage. Could you maybe tell Tyler I'm sorry? I don't have his number, and I don't think he'd want to hear from me anyway. I'll tell him. After we hung up, I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time. Then I texted Tyler. Just got an interesting call from your cousin. His response came quickly. I summarized the conversation. Tyler replied, wow. Good for him, I guess. Neither of us reached out to rebuild the relationship. Some bridges, once burned, aren't meant to be rebuilt. But I felt a small measure of satisfaction knowing that Brandon was finally learning the lessons his parents should have taught him years ago. The following summer, Tyler graduated from his master's program with honors. The ceremony was smaller, more intimate. I sat in the audience watching him accept his diploma, this time without any dramatic incidents. Afterward, he found me on the lawn. Thanks for coming, Mom. I wouldn't have missed it for anything. He pulled an envelope from under his gown and handed it to me. Inside was a gift card to my favorite bookstore, along with a note in his careful handwriting. For always having my back, even when it's hard. For teaching me that self-respect matters more than keeping the peace. For being the kind of person who does the right thing. I love you, Mom. My vision blurred with tears. Tyler hugged me tightly, and in that moment, everything I'd been through felt worthwhile. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did. If I think I overreacted, if I should have handled it differently. The truth is complicated. I don't enjoy family drama. I don't like being painted as the villain in someone else's story. The months of angry messages and accusations weren't pleasant. But when I look at Tyler, thriving and successful and self-assured, I know I made the right choice. I taught him that he deserved respect. I showed him that standing up for yourself isn't selfish or petty. I demonstrated that sometimes love means consequences, not endless second chances. Brandon calling to apologize was unexpected but ultimately irrelevant to my decision. I didn't cancel his job to teach him a lesson or punish him. I did it because I realized I'd compromised my professional integrity to enable someone's bad behavior, and I couldn't live with that. The gift card was never really about the money. It was about the moment my family chose to value keeping the peace over doing what was right. It was about watching my son's hurt face and hearing my sister tell me to let it go. So I let it go. Just not in the way she expected. Tyler starts his first real job next month at an engineering firm, making more money than I ever did at his age. He earned every bit of it through hard work and determination. Nobody handed him anything. Nobody made excuses for him. And he's better for it. As for Natalie and me, we're civil at family gatherings now, though we'll never be close again. That's okay. Some relationships are meant to run their course. She made her choices, and I made mine. The last time I saw Brandon was at my mother's birthday party last month. He's still working at the warehouse, but he mentioned he'd been promoted to shift supervisor. He nodded at me across the room, respectful but distant. I nodded back. Maybe someday there will be real reconciliation. Maybe not. Either way, I sleep well at night knowing I stood up for my son when it mattered most. And that gift card incident? It cost Brandon a $45,000 a year job with benefits and room for advancement. I'd say that's a pretty expensive lesson about respecting other people's property. Relax, Natalie always said. It's just money. She's right about one thing. It's just a job I arranged.